diplomacy. Former French ambassador to Ghana. She relinquished her post just a few months ago to take up a bigger position in the world of diplomacy. Now she says she's never been trained as a diplomat. In other words, she's not a career diplomat. But my brother, my sister, since she touched foot on this country, on this country's soils, she has achieved a lot. Many people have become so endeared to her. Recently, she came from a bout of sickness, and many were those who were to call and say, oh my, please come back soon. We have missed you. And she's sitting right in front of me. Doesn't look like she's been to the hospital before. My God. It looks like the doctors in France are doing a very good job. Number one, my excitement is the fact that Anne is here with us. And number two, I've been given the very wonderful opportunity to speak to Anna after so much that we have heard about her and beyond. This is the African History Club. Are you ready? Blakk Rasta Friday edition of the African History Class, and Anne is in the house. I cannot wait to start it all. Anne, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
Oh my God. Did you actually fall sick? It doesn't look like you've been sick at all.
Well, I think I don't look as good as I used to, but I'm trying my best. It was 3 months since surgery, so
oh wow.
I'm recovering slowly. Ghana is a big healer, because
wow.
It was also my objective to come back here as soon as I could walk and I could be fit enough to take a plane, and that really kept me going.
Whoa. So what sent you to the hospital? Tell me, recount, tell me something.
Well, it was the second time I had cancer. So it was a recess of a 14-year-old cancer.
Wow.
And luckily it was operable. So it was a bit of a shock to hear that, because I didn't expect it at all. But I was very lucky, as you rightly say. We are very lucky in France. We have an amazing welfare system and health system. And I think we really have nothing but gratitude for this system, because much as I had thousands exams, tests, surgeries, time in hospital, intensive care, it didn't cost me a penny.
Wow.
And that is something that we have to be very grateful for. We do contribute through our salaries every month, whether we are sick or not. But that system that the French do not seem to realize, that it's a blessing. When you are sick, you don't have to sell your house, you don't have to take a loan. You are cured, full stop. And that's something we are very grateful for.
Interesting. So, I mean, when you were told that you were going to, you were sick and you were suffering from a cancer, did you believe that you were going to come out of the hospital, or did you believe that you were going to die? Did you write a will? What was it like for you?
Well, I actually drew 3 lessons out of this. The first one is that you never beat cancer. You think you are cancer-free. After 14 years, I thought I was done with it. And it's stronger than you. So it keeps coming back, like the enemy you think you had eventually beaten, and it's rising again. So that's, you are in remission, and it can come back anytime. So it makes you feel very humble and take care of yourself maybe a bit more.
Right.
The second lesson I drew out of that is that you always need your parents. I am so lucky I have my parents still alive and kicking, and thank God they were there, because after hospital I was able to go to recovery and stay with them, and they took care of me like you can take care of your own children. And the third lesson I drew is that Ghanaians are amazing, because out of hundreds of messages I was receiving, most of them, but the vast majority of them, were Ghanaians.
Wow.
And sometimes when indeed it was so tough and so hard that I felt I would give up, I only had to look at my phone or my social media, and the overwhelming support I had, I thought, no, I cannot disappoint these people. And that I have found so much strength in this support. So thank you for the opportunity to say thank you to each and every one, including you, Blakk Rasta,
Wow.
many people in the entertainment industry, but also very normal people who are not celebrities who wrote to me, be it through DM or WhatsApp, my former staff, the people I knew, friends from Ghana. You have no idea. It was absolutely not only overwhelming, but life-saving.
Interesting. Did you ever think about writing a will, or did you write one?
Writing what?
A will.
Oh, in France, you don't need to write a will, because whatever you have goes to your children whatsoever. And there's only a small part of what you have that you can actually take away from your children to give to whoever you wish. But then this is taxed up to 60%. So it's usually a poison gift, because whoever receives it has so much taxes to pay that it's not interesting. So my children are... They are the ones who are going to inherit whatever small things I have. And I don't need to write a will. This goes automatically.
So in France, you don't actually need to write a will. Everything you have would go to your children.
Yes.
If you don't have children, what happens?
It goes to your parents, and if you don't, and if they're dead, it goes to your brothers and sisters. And then there is a hierarchy of next of kin. So if you don't have brothers and sisters, go to your cousins, and there's like an order line. So it's never lost.
So you don't have a choice to say, I don't want this to go to my children
No.
or my family because they're not good to me.
No.
I want to send them to somebody else.
No, you have no right to disinherit your
The family.
Your family. No, you have no right to do that. So if you have two children, whatever you have is divided in three. Two parts go to your children, and the third part you can choose to give it to whoever. If you are married and you don't want your children to take everything from your surviving spouse, then you have to write an agreement when you get married that whatever you have will go to your spouse until he or she dies, and then it will go to your children.
Wow.
But this is really set, and you really don't have choice. And there is no way you can actually take things away from your children unless you dilapidate all you have and you are left with nothing, so they don't inherit anything.
Last question on your sickness, and we'll look at something quickly. What gave you cancer? What was the problem?
I have no idea. This is we've been looking at we've been doing lab tests and all that to see if there was some sort of genetic gene or whatever. It's just bad luck. This cancer shouldn't have happened 14 years ago. It's ovarian cancer is something that normally happens when you're over 60 and when you have never had kids. So it was unlikely to happen when I was 40, and it was even more unlikely to happen again 14 years later. It is so rare that the number of cases is you can count on your fingers. So it's always a case study. Well, much as I'm honored to be very unique in this respect, I would have done without. And it's not really easy, because many oncologists are discussing, debating what's to be done, because they don't have enough cases to draw statistics and say, oh, in this kind of cancer, you need to do chemo or you need to do this. They have such a little number that they are debating. So far, I don't know if I'll have a treatment afterwards. All I know is that I feel good, but I did feel good when I was diagnosed, and that was the big shock. I was perfectly fine, alive and kicking, and you get the news through a random exam that you have cancer and you've got like 3 to 6 months ahead, and that is a big shock. But then you have your choice. You have people who support you, who love you. You have your children. You have people who count on you. So you have to survive, however hard it is. You have to do it.
Interesting. And Sophie Ave is my guest right here in the studio. Former ambassador of France to Ghana, now an ambassador of France to the whole of Africa. Can you believe that? Now, in your absence, so many coups all over the place, most of them in the Francophone areas. What is the role France is playing in this? Is France such a bad country that it looks like all these countries are trying to run away from France? Any coup that comes up, oh, go away, France, we don't want to see you. What is the problem?
Well, I think the common point is that, yes, in 3 out of 4 of those cases, France is the scapegoat and the good alibi and a good reason to take over power for egotist and selfish and money reasons, actually. And then it's a good alibi to say we are here against France. The thing is, it's not the case in Guinea. It's a bit different in Guinea. But in the Mali, then Burkina, and then Niger, as it happens, France was there at the request of those countries. So there are 2 things to help understand what's happening. And it's very human. It's not so sophisticated as diplomacy and politics. It's very human. If I invite you, I beg you to come to my house because I can't handle a situation by myself, and I ask you to come. So you come. And the moment you sit there, you're seated, I start shouting that you're a thief and that you broke into my house.
Was that what happened? Did
That's what
Francophone
happened.
Beg France to come over?
Of course. In 2014, I was actually in the Ministry of Defense when Mali begged us to come to help to fight terrorism.
Wow.
Terrorists were marching onto Gao and Bamako. So they begged us to come and support the Malian army, which we did. We sent troops very quickly. Within 48 hours, we were able to send troops. And once we got there, the deal was we should have been supporting the Malian army. But when we got there, we realized that the Malian army was not trained. They were not ready to take over. It was not helping them. It was doing. So we got trapped in a situation where we were actually policing the whole of Mali, a country that we didn't know. We were not familiar with neither the people nor the geographics. And we had to not only fight terrorism, but then make sure it wasn't coming back. And we got trapped in this situation. We stayed for too long. We probably were wrong by not explaining enough what we were doing here. And of course, the authorities were only too happy that we were killed and not them. So of course, they wouldn't say thank you for being here and supporting us. Whatever was going wrong, we were easy to blame because we were there. But the moment Mali asked us to leave, we did. And they started, of course, they carried on blaming things on us, even if we were not there, making up some stories, not all by themselves, but with Wagner helping them. That's how they made these fake cemetery where many people would have been buried. I can't remember what the name is. And thank God we captured some messages when they were preparing that thing. And we managed to send a drone. So we could film them preparing that and then filming it to pretend that the French had done it. So that was one time we were able to debunk a fake video, a fake thing. That was absolutely outrageous. Gossi, the camp was Gossi. But sadly, they are very imaginative. They are creating fake news. The latest was a fake picture, complete montage of someone that more or less looked like Putin, walking in an army suit with African militaries. And the caption was, look, Putin has always been supporting decolonization. But Putin was born in 1952. In 1960, he was 8. So there's not a chance that he was close or from close or far involved in decolonization or liberation. But people were so gullible and so convinced that it was him, and they couldn't see it was just a montage, it was not even him. They said, yeah, but it was Namibia in 1970, where he would have been 18. And it doesn't make sense either. So the problem is that once you have hammered in, you have put ideas in some people's head that are credible, it's very difficult to debunk. It's very difficult to say that it's false. And the problem with conspiracy theories is that it links dots that have nothing to do with each other. But you can, if you make a connection, it's credible. So, for instance, if I say, look, every day, every evening, I drink a glass of water, and every morning the sun rises. And both facts are facts. I can prove that I drink a glass of water, and I can prove that the sun rises. But conspiracy theories will make a connection, and say, the day you will stop drinking a glass of water, the sun won't rise again. And this belief actually was in the Ankas society centuries ago. They thought that if they did not slaughter a goat or a sheep, the sun wouldn't rise again. So you see, gullibility is something that it's very easy, especially when, and that's when we were wrong, there is no other truth that is being told. When we saw those fake news, fake photos and videos around blaming us on stealing things, on being in Mali to steal. Seriously, what is there to steal? What is there to steal that we couldn't buy, that we couldn't afford? Really, would we have soldiers killed to steal what exactly? Not one single company is doing mining in Mali or Burkina. So it was ridiculous. And it was so ridiculous that we thought nobody would believe it. And that's where we were wrong. Because even when we are accused of something absolutely ridiculous, we have to deny. We have to deny immediately, because otherwise, who says nothing seems to consent. And we woke up a bit too late, because all those fakes and all those conspiracy theories were already widely spread. And now, with Niger, the new thing is that we would be organizing a counter-coup, that we are staying because we want the uranium. Seriously, if you go and buy tomatoes somewhere, and this person says, I don't want to sell you my tomatoes anymore, well, you go somewhere else. So if we don't buy uranium from Niger, we'll buy it from somewhere else. It's no big deal. It's a big deal for them, because what we buy, the price we buy it, is a big, big part of their GDP. And if they have to sell it to someone else, first of all, they have to find someone who will extract it, because we are not only buying it, but it's not nicely wrapped when we buy it. We have to go and dig ourselves. And we create jobs because we hire. The French company is hiring local staff. If they deal with another country to do that, do they really believe that this country will hire local people, pay the high price that we do? But it's their problem, not ours. If they don't sell uranium to us, there are many other providers. So who needs who? And I can understand that it's very difficult to be in a position where you are the obligé. You receive money, you receive subsidies, you receive grants, you receive aid, and all you can say is thank you. And we have created that situation where they feel probably humiliated. And we were slowly moving from aid to trade, even if we were actually pouring money onto them. Maybe it was wrong. And if you look at the way the Russians operate, sending a private company who is actually charging 10 million a month to ensure only the palace's security, not the people's security, but the palace's security, and they're happy to pay. And they pay with their resources. So, but at least they feel that they are buying something. They feel they're paying. And they feel proud because it is their decision. So I think that if there is something we can reproach to France, is that we haven't taken things seriously. We have taken these relationships for granted. We were doing and paying so much that we thought they would only be grateful. And we forgot that human is human. And we need to be humble, and we need to respect those people and their pride. And that's what probably we've missed doing.
And are you saying that Francophone Africa needs France more than France needs Francophone Africa?
Of course. There is this romantic vision in France that we need. We feel guilty about colonization, and we need to make up for it. So that's the need we had, making up for it. But if you look at those countries, they are not the wealthiest. Which are the countries that are succeeding in the continent? Well, there is Nigeria in terms of GDP, even if they have challenges. Ghana is doing well, South Africa, Kenya, they're not really Francophone countries. Of course, now Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire are doing well. But Senegal, remember, 10 years ago, it was still war. So the countries that are doing well and are suddenly rising, Ethiopia is also coming out. Rwanda, they were not Francophone countries, and they're the ones we do have an interest to work with. We do have an interest to trade with, because they have the money, the middle class, who can actually buy the goods that we might be selling. And they are reliable countries with which we can actually create some strong trade links. If you look at the GDPs, you would wonder, really, if we need any. We don't need commercially or even the vote in the UN General Assembly. That's what people thought that we were chasing. They need us far more than we need them.
Do you think that France destroyed the Francophone Africa in colonialism?
I think we by changing the core organization of their administration, by not respecting their traditions as much as the Brits did, probably in their countries, by changing the names of people, changing the very core roots of what their organization was. I don't know if it destroyed them, but it has imposed on them an organization that wasn't theirs, and they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to handle it. And now they have to, they've probably tried, but I think that they didn't take over after decolonization.
Did you steal their mineral resources?
No, of course not. We don't do mining. We don't do that.
No, I'm talking about colonialism. Did you steal anything from Francophone Africa?
At that time, they were French territories. So if we exploited resources and sell them, it was like we exploited our own, because they were considered by the people at that time, none of which are still alive to testify. But at that time, it was considered French countries. But with the resources that we were probably exploiting and selling, we were, in these countries, building roads and hospitals and developing. Of course, we were developing in the European way, probably not the way they would have developed if they had done themselves. So we were, but most colonialism did that, imposing our way. So you need cars, you need roads, you need hospitals, and notwithstanding the way villages were organized and their beliefs and the way they were healing and the kind of nature or natural healing they were using, we said, no, this is not whereas let's do it the European way. But what I'm saying is that whatever was exploited from these countries at that time of colonialism was re-injected in these countries to develop it in the European way.
Is that true?
Well, of course. Look at the countries who have chosen to remain French, like La Réunion, like French Guyana. It's France. So it is developed like France. You have all the features of France because they wanted to remain French. They didn't want to be decolonized. They wanted to remain French. So we've carried on investing and, of course, exploiting. In French Guyana, we have gold. So this is now a district, a region of France. The gold belongs to France, but the money that we are making through this resource is benefiting this very region. It belongs to France. It is France. So during colonialism, the territories that were colonies, they belonged to the colonial power. It was wrong, but that's how it was. And unfortunately, I don't know anyone who was alive at that time, right, as a grown-up, and who can explain and say, we have books, we have testimonies, but there's something that's important, is that it was a handful of people in France that were actually dealing with colonialism. A handful of companies, mainly those who wanted to develop Guadeloupe and Martinique in the Antilles, where we needed some labor work. And in France, as we know, the Hexagon, France, there were not many people from Africa, be it from slavery or from colonialism. So most French, even at that time, had absolutely no idea. No idea.
Let's look at the countries that decided not to be part of France. I'm talking about Guinea, for instance. Now, if France was there to, exploit the country's resources and all that in colonialism, at the time Guinea said, we don't want France anymore, leave. France decided to take up almost everything that was developed in that country away, including putting concrete inside drainage pipes and all that. I don't know how you will react to this.
Well, I think there's part of this that is the legend. We did take away a few things that we thought, okay, you don't want us, we go. I mean,
a few things or everything?
No. The history says that Guineans destroyed a lot of things because they thought that was remains of colonialism. So they destroyed it. So it was a joint thing. It was a very harsh divorce. But I think that it's also explained the difference of relationships that we have now with Guinea. We divorced in a very violent way. Like every divorce is never it's always harsh. So it was unexpected. In 1958, all colonies were invited, French colonies were invited to vote for or against the new constitution. Only Guinea voted against. So yes, we probably were, again, I wasn't born. It was 10 years before I was born. But history books say that de Gaulle was very upset. He didn't expect that. So he reacted very harshly. So, okay, you don't want us, we go. In a very harsh way. Like when you divorce, one takes the lamp, and I will take the small spoon, and I will take this, and I will take that. And on your way to the door, you break the plates and china that you had received for your wedding. And it's always dirty. It's always messy. But they also destroyed things that they considered remains of colonialism. So for a couple of years, then they decided to leave the CFA, which they did, and France didn't behave well. Again, upset, and we were afraid that all the other colonies would suddenly decide to take their independence. It was a different era. So it was absolutely messy, and it's important that now we reopen those books and we open the archives and we say, okay, here's what happened. Okay. But the good thing about Guinea is that after they had independence, they got their own currency, they did their own thing. They turned towards Russia and China and Turkey for cooperation. And they have experienced what it is. And if you go to Guinea now, you will see that it's no way near the development of Ghana, no way near. Because they have experienced what it is to be actually stolen and to be disrespected. So when you tell them, if the French go, will you turn towards Russia? They're going to tell you, no, we've been there, we've done that, we know what it is, no way. So the coup there was a different coup for different reasons than the other three. But I think that in diplomacy, in international relations, it's never good to have one specific partner. On the contrary to human relationships, where it is usually better to only have one wife and one husband, in diplomacy, polygamy is certainly recommended because you never know. And it's important to have trade balanced between several different partners, because if one of them comes to fail, like suddenly all that the trade we had with Russia was is no longer possible. Thank God France didn't buy gas or much gas from Russia, and the little we're buying we can buy from somewhere else, which is not the case of Germany, for instance, who completely relies on the Russian gas. So of course, when you have a problem with Russia and you say, oh, we have to take sanctions and we have to fraud and we have to tell them it's not good what they're doing, they're bad boys. If you completely rely on them and you are completely dependent from them, it's very difficult to take sanctions. So the best thing that any country can do, and I think Ghana does that pretty well, is spread your partnerships among as many countries as you can.
And Sophie Ave is my guest, former French ambassador to Ghana, now French ambassador to the whole of Africa. And we are looking at some of the things happening right here around Africa and beyond. Now, Anne, is it true that there was a certain pact that was signed between France and Francophone Africa, which said, amongst others, number one, France is going to leave you to run your own country, but any mineral resources you find in your country France must be the first buyer. If France is not interested in buying these things, then France would suggest some other person to come and buy that. And two, you would have your own currency, but it will be tied to France. In fact, about 80% of all the money that you have in terms of reserves, foreign reserves, would be in French coffers. And anytime you want a loan, we loan the same money to you, and then we would take interest on that commercial interest. How true is that? Do you know of a part like that?
Not exactly. It is true that we gave independence and we said we're not abandoning you. So if you need someone to buy your resources, if we can, we will. So it was a way of saying we will not abandon you. As for the currency, for Christ's sake, this is the thing that has risen the most fantasy. The CFA was indeed created in 1945, and it was a common currency. And if you look at what ECOWAS is hoping for, a common currency, look at what Europe has created, a common currency. It was a mean to do trade among those countries and to improve the trade among these countries. Having the euro in Europe has amazingly developed the trade and circulation among people and goods among Europe. So it's a good thing to have a common currency. So there was a common currency, the CFA, one in West Africa, one in Central Africa, and another one, but just for Comoros. So what we said about the reserves was not 80%, but 50% that were stored like a placement in the treasury, the French treasury, and for these reserves, we were paying high interest rates every year. In 2019, President Macron went to Côte d'Ivoire and said, okay, we are fed up with being bashed. This is enough. You want your reserves back, have them. We are paying for them. We are paying interest rates, high interest rates on them. You want them back, take them back. You have a problem with having a French person in the board of the central bank for CFA. Okay, we will leave it. We will no longer have a French person in the board. But we can carry on guaranteeing the currency so it doesn't collapse. And we pay for it. So the year we gave them the reserves back, we had paid 52 million euros interest. So if stealing is paying 52 million euros, you can steal me every day. So this CFA thing is for their own benefit. If you look at the currencies now, look at the CD, look at the Naira, and look at the CFA. CFA is stable. People want to trade in CFA because the CFA is stable. And why is it stable? Because we guarantee it. We play the role of an insurer, and we guarantee that currency and the convertibility against euro. And this currency is stable, which is helping those countries not to collapse, their economy not to collapse.
Anne, is it true that in the pact, France could go into any francophone country if they felt that French interest was being looked down on with military? Is it true?
Not anymore. After colonization, there may have been a few years during which there was a strong feeling that these countries needed to be monitored, they couldn't be left just like that. But this is absolutely not true anymore. If we have an army or soldiers in a country, we must have an agreement. We have a defense agreement. These, for instance, the 5 or 6 defense agreements that the coup makers pretend they have cancelled. But a defense agreement is a joint agreement where both sides are signing and agree that this military can operate and what they are allowed to do. And it's called a SOFA. For one of them, it's called a SOFA, which says what the status of those forces are and what they are allowed to do. They're allowed to come in with their arms. What happens if they do commit wrongdoing? Are they trialed in the country or are they sent back in the country? So the agreement looks at every detail of the presence of the military, but it's never a unilateral. No one imposes anything on a sovereign country. So the countries where we have bases like Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon, and Senegal, whenever we talk about withdrawing, they are the very first to come and say, no, please stay. Because to them, it is a safety to have French soldiers around, and to have 1,500, which is the number we have in Côte d'Ivoire and around the number we have in Senegal. It means 1,500 families with a high power of purchase, who buy, use the restaurants, they use the hotels, so they bring a lot of money in the local economy. So do the embassies, and so do the teachers of the French lycées, and like also foreign countries, bases, whatever they are. So they don't want us to leave.
Okay.
But this is used by those who are so-called Pan-Africanists to say, look, the French don't want to leave. We would love to. It costs us a fortune to be there. But these countries, they ask us to stay.
If France is that good to the so-called Francophone countries, why is it that there's a very popular uprising and it's being supported by so many people that it's time for France to leave? And France is still lurking around in some of these countries and not saying that, listen, we are leaving Africa alone.
True. I think there are two things. We didn't do everything right, as I said. We are not so good. We didn't do everything right. We stayed too long with our forces in the terrorist fight. We should have realized that it was an internal issue and that eventually we should have left earlier. We have not been communicating enough. We have not been explaining. We were there. We thought that people knew. We didn't say what we were doing. We didn't say how much we were paying. We didn't do transparency of what we were doing. So this has fueled all sorts of fantasies. But at the same time, we were sandwiched by the appetite of other powers who suddenly wanted to lay their hands on African resources. And they said the best way to gain people's hearts is to make them feel that they are victims, to name and shame the bad guy, and so they would appear as being the saviors. And we were trapped into this. And again, we didn't see it coming. We should have reacted earlier. We couldn't believe what was happening because to us, Russia was an ally. We had the G7, we had opened it to become the G8 because we thought that they were a big power and they were people we could talk to. We were miles away. We were probably very naive. And we were miles away from thinking that they were actually trying to lay their hands on African resources because they need money to reconquer their former Soviet empire. And we were in disbelief that this could possibly happen.
Interesting. So is France still in Niger, and is France going to leave?
Where? Niger? Well, the problem we have currently with Niger is that Bazoum is still the president, whatever those coup makers are saying. He's still alive, even if we are very worried that they might kill him. And he is still the legitimate president. So the agreements we have are with a legitimate president who's been elected democratically by the majority of the people. So if we listen to the first coup maker who just didn't want to go to the retirement, because that's what the guy is. He's a general, was about to go retire, didn't want to be retired, therefore he made a coup. And if we obey the first coup maker and destabilize a whole international agreement that we may have, then it's going to be a huge mess and anarchy everywhere. We have agreements with Niger, and because we see, and not only us, the Americans too. So far, we haven't lost hope that Bazoum would be reinstalled and that this coup maker adventurist would go back to his retirement. So what happens if we leave and then eventually Bazoum says, "Hey, we had an agreement and now you're gone." So we are in the middle of not exactly knowing what we should do. We know the French are endangered there. We have evacuated all the civilians that we could, the French. We've also done something that is probably the most painful sanction to those three countries, is cut the visas. Because the hilarious thing of those people who allegedly hate France and spit on France and say evil about France, is that these very same people have flats in France, properties in France, their children study in France, they have their assets in France. So they keep coming and going and flying to France to live the great life in Paris and go to French hospitals and which is perfectly fine. But then when you have so much links with a country, you don't spit on it. And so cutting the visas in these countries is a very painful move for them. The French have no appetite to go to Niger. I mean, the beaches of Niger, the beaches of Mali, honestly, not great tourist sites. They do have heritage, but the French, it is not the preferred destination of the French. They will go to Maldives, Bahamas, and hopefully one day massively to Ghana. But Mali will never be a great tourist place. Never. So,
are you that angry?
About what?
They would not be able to develop their beaches and develop their heritage.
Well, they don't have access to the sea, so I doubt they have beaches. But they could develop a heritage and cultural tourism. But as long as there will be insecurity, no one will go there. So no French goes to Mali. But we have in France 200,000 Malians who live in France. Some of them have double citizenship. So they have close links with their families back in Mali who want to come and visit, and they want to come and visit, and they send money. So if we cut those links, who's going to suffer?
Have you cut those links?
The financial links, no, not yet. But we've cut the visas.
The visas to anybody from those countries?
To the people from those countries, yes.
Everybody?
Yeah.
So no Malian is going to be able to get a visa to France right now?
No, but why would he come? They hate us. They burn our embassies. They destroy our Alliance Française.
Everybody in Mali hates France?
No, of course not. But sadly, they are the ones who rule Mali. So until there will be elections and the majority, whether they like France or not, that's not the main question. They will vote for a democratically elected leader, and then we will talk to that leader. If this leader wants to work with France, welcome. If he doesn't, well, we're very fine without them.
So visas have been cut from countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and which other country?
Niger.
Oh, wow. But France is still in Niger.
Of course.
Why didn't you do the same thing with Burkina Faso and also Mali? Because the presidents who were removed in those countries were still alive, they were not killed. In your interest.
We did that with Burkina, waiting, hoping that they would reinstall the president. We also did that in Mali, but then we had to come to the conclusion that those coup makers were here to stay. And whatever they were saying, that it was just a transition and they were willing to give power to whoever would be democratically elected, they have no intention to organize elections. They have every intention to stay where they are. And the moment we have come to that conclusion, we understood that it would be impossible to discuss and to talk with these people. So we have cut our grants, our subsidies. We had to also, they forced us to stop paying the NGOs and associations in Mali. So, of course, the association and NGOs and people who were benefiting humanitarian aid, they are dying, they are crying, but there's nothing we can do. They have these leaders. So, self-proclaimed coup makers, but these leaders are saying we don't want you. So we and our money, we are leaving.
So now that you have cut visas to these countries, Burkina Faso, Niger, and also Mali, have they reciprocated by also cutting visas from France?
They can, but nobody from France wants to travel to these countries.
Really?
Well, they are in red in the traveler's advice. So we advise not to go for security reasons. Those who are in Niger or Burkina or Mali, the French who are still there, have very strong advice of being careful not to go out. Some of them have been threatened, some of them have been beaten up just because they were white. So we are telling them not to go. So there's strong advice not to go to these countries. So we don't really care.
Why is it, and I'm going to ask again, that it looks like this uprising that is happening in Africa is all from the Francophone countries? Why?
Well, I think because these countries again, do not connect dots that cannot be connected. As it happened, they were francophone, but if you look at the record of coup making, Sudan is still far first. And in terms of total number, since decolonization, Ghana had 20, and these countries haven't yet reached that number. So it's a question of era. They haven't had many coups while you were having some, so it's now their turn.
Are you saying Ghana has had 20 coup d'etats?
Yeah, that's the numbers we have in the figures we had.
Where is this statistics from? 20 coup d'etats in Ghana?
Since
Kwame Nkrumah?
Since decolonization, that's the figures we had in statistics.
No, that is very huge.
We will check.
Anyway.
But you've had a few. You've had a few.
Yes,
and these
sorry.
countries haven't had theirs, so it's their turn, I suppose. I think there is also the influence of Russia. There is, and again, it's a very easy argument that France can be a very easy scapegoat, so it has given ideas to some to say, okay, all I want is take power, but I can blame it on the French. And sadly, we are worried that it might not be the last.
Is Mohamed Bazoum a puppet of France? We hear he's giving a lot of, companies there with some very, very weak agreements to France. Is it true?
Not at all. Not at all. He's a leader who has access to facts and figures, and he sees who is in a call for tender, who offers the best guarantees and the best offer. So he chooses the best offer. And it's not true that France is everywhere. I mean, Niger has many, many companies from many different countries operating there. This is so untrue that France has everything. On the contrary, I think we have lost a lot of markets in the past years, because we might not be as competitive as other countries, because we do not fight like other countries do, because, again, our fault, our bad. We tend to believe that, we just make an offer, and because it was a form of Francophone countries, it will work. But now these countries, they have a choice, and they don't always go for France. And so it's not true. Just if you look at the companies operating out there, it's not true. It's not even true that France is the biggest donor.
Are you going to cut visas from anybody who disagrees with France?
Well, we haven't cut visas until our embassy was attacked. Our French nationals were threatened, until we had a serious danger. The coup, for instance, in Mali happened 3 years ago. The situation in Central Africa, that we don't mention Central Africa, is no better. And the French are being threatened. They are called to kill the ambassador, and we haven't cut visas. So it's a measure we take when eventually we say, okay, this is enough. We've had far too much. And again, it makes sense when these specific people who call for hatred against the French, who call for killings against the French, are the very same people whose children are schooled in France, who have apartments, properties, assets in France.
Are you going to freeze those?
Well, it depends who, because some people are for instance, in Central Africa, some ministers who were occupying social housing, if you can believe it. They had social housing in France. We froze that. We froze those assets. It doesn't stop them from coming, but because we need to have very good reasons to freeze the assets of a minister, and they will shout that it's unfair.
Paul Biya recently talked against homosexuality and all that. What's your relationship with Paul Biya in Cameroon?
He's just the head of state of Cameroon. So we're talking to him like we're talking to any other heads of states. It's none of our business to decide who should rule which country. Amazingly, I was in Cameroon a few months ago, because in my new posting I'm supposed to go in different countries. And I went to Cameroon, and journalists were asking, and I went to university in Chang, and what surprised me was that the questions were always, what is France doing? What does France think? What does France say? What do we... And I was like, but this is none of our business. And I had this amazing question, because I was there, it was the Youth Week. And Paul Biya had made a speech that was recorded, so we could only have the audio, to entice the youth to be entrepreneurs, and it was a word for the youth. And I had that question, what do you think about Paul Biya talking to the youth while he's over 90 years old? And I was like, what do you think about Macron doing a pension reform while he is hardly 40? It is none of our business. I don't vote in Cameroon. We don't vote, French don't vote in Cameroon. It's important to decolonize your mind, and stop asking us. In Chang, in the university, I had those weird questions that, are you going to give scholarships? What are you going to do? Are you going to finance this motorway? Are you going to... Hey, I'm not ruling your country. We do not manage your country. So if you need a motorway, talk to your leaders. You need scholarships, talk to your leaders. You need scholarships to France, that's a different matter. But we are not here to rule your country. And it's very much still, what is very worrying, it is in the mindset of young people who were born 40, 50 years after colonization. They still believe that France is like an invisible hand that is almighty and that can do everything, and that if these countries are thriving, it's because France wants them to, and if they are not, it's because France doesn't want them to.
Is that not true?
Of course not. Go to France and ask the people what they think about Africa. The vast majority have no clue. They have no clue. That's the sad thing, maybe, about my country, is that the people in my country are only interested in themselves.
This is 3FM.
Watch the news. They only talk about themselves. So nobody knows where Ghana is. Nobody knows that it's a cool and peaceful country. They don't know, because what interests them is me, myself, and I. And it's very human. I love my country. I love my people. But we are very much self-centered.
This is the last question I'm going to ask you on this, and then we'll move to something quickly as we are running out of time. And Sophie Ave is my guest right in the studio, and we're having a beautiful conversation. I'm going to ask you something about France one more time. Would there come a time when France will say enough is enough? We are leaving Africa permanently, just like the English did to the Anglophone countries. Will there be a time like that?
I think we have left already from some countries, and there's leaving and leaving.
Are you going back?
Where?
To those countries you've left.
If they ask us to.
Oh, you will go back?
Well, if they ask us to come back, and what does that mean, coming back?
Because I know that happened in Guinea. You were sent out and then you were called back again.
Yes, but we started from fresh. And we started on a healthier basis, because we had lived without each other for about 20 years. So when we came back, it was on very healthy basis.
Did you make it a better country when you returned?
No, because it was not ours to do it. It's their role to do it. They are ruling themselves.
So what did your coming back do to help?
We are doing cooperation in areas where they ask us to. And again, the money of the French taxpayers has to go to develop France. And 6 billion is dedicated to Africa. But
every year?
Yeah. But this is not enough. If you divide that by the number of countries, the number of people, it's not enough. So it's really up to these countries, and to these countries to have many partnerships with many countries, probably to manage their resources better so that it benefits the people. But it is up to these countries, each of them, to develop the way they want it. And then if there is an area where they feel that we can help, be it through a loan at a low rate, be it through a grant or a subsidy, they can come and say, can you help us? And if we can, we will. But there are areas where we won't. Mining, for instance, we will never do anything in this area, because we cannot sign the Paris Agreement on the one hand, saying we should not use fossil energy, and finance fossil energy on the other end. So we are just trying to be a bit coherent. But it cannot be us doing things in these countries.
If you don't use fossil energy, what do you use then?
Yeah, we do use fossil energy. I mean, we need to have diesel for our cars, but we are developing electric cars a lot. We are developing windmills and solar panels and electric things better than diesel.
So what's the importance of the agreement you signed?
Which agreement?
Against the fossil energy and all that.
Well, that's the Paris Agreement. That's an international agreement that says that we have to reduce the fossil energy and the CO2 emission by half by 2050.
And this is all about oil. How about the gold and the diamond and that? Mining can still go on.
Well, we have gold in Guyana, so we don't. It's none of our business what countries do. But if they have resources and they need to extract gold because that's one of their resources, and they need that money to build roads and hospitals and school, it is their country. It is none of our business to say you should or you should not. What we can say is that for the benefit of the planet, because this is a common good, and the climate change impacts everyone. If there is some gold extraction, and if you have to destroy forests to do that, please plant again. Please make sure that you do not do too much damage to what is the lung of the planet, which are the forests. But who are we to lecture? I think, and that would be my final word, what we should stop absolutely, and when I say we, it's France, but also all the Western country, what we should stop absolutely is lecturing and patronizing. These countries are big enough, they know what they want to do. If they want to destroy themselves, they can destroy themselves. We have destroyed our country. We have had crises. We've had whole centuries of wars in our country, and nobody was frowning. Nobody was meddling into it in centuries back. So these countries, they have to decide for themselves. And the last thing we should do is patronize or lecture, because that's not working.
Is mining still going on in France?
In Guyana, yeah.
In France?
French Guyana is France.
Okay, I'm talking about France as in Europe.
Oh, I don't think we have much mining. We used to have bauxite, and we used to have some, but I think we run out of it.
So you don't have any minerals in France right now?
Yeah, we do. We have quite a few, but we don't. Not as much as you have on the African continent.
So would you agree that your colonizing of Africa gave you a lot of wealth? Is France rich because of colonization?
I don't think so. I think, yes, it was enlarging the empire to the east, to the west, to the east, to the south, and indeed, in the past centuries, it probably was part of the wealth. But, the wealth was also used to develop those territories, not only France. And if you look at the 19th century, it was the most troubled century in France ever. So I don't think that our wealth comes from those resources that were, again, the wealth of it was re-injected in developing roads and infrastructures in these countries and not really ours. France has a 2,000 billion GDP.
Where is it from? Where is the wealth of France from? If you don't have minerals and all that.
Services, tourism, 20% of it is tourism. Services, our industry, banking system.
How did you put up these banking systems and tourisms and all that if you don't have money?
Well, tourism, the Eiffel Tower was built by Gustave Eiffel. Tourism is because of the castles, churches, made with local stones.
How did you build all these things without resources?
We have resources.
From where? What
From
kind
France.
of resources?
We have resources.
What kind of resources do you have?
Well, that's a great question. I don't have that in mind, but we have the resources to produce the iron, to produce all the stones that were needed to do all the churches and castles that are now places of interest where people are coming. They were all from France. We didn't import them from anywhere.
So your resources in France are stones?
No, we also have minerals. We also have minerals, but we don't need. We don't need that. It's not the minerals that we need to when you do services, when you do computer services, and we are very much into globalization. So it really is a fantasy to believe that all your wealth is resources. You look at Japan; they don't have resources, and yet it's a leading country. They don't have one single resource. So it's not resources that make the wealth of a country. It can, on the contrary, be a curse. So France is mainly trade, services, banking, tourism, industry. We produce a lot, pharmaceutical. We have, these are very much added value things, you see. Low cost to produce, high value when you sell it.
This is 3FM.
I am yet to understand how a country has no resources and is still able to be wealthy. What do you trade in? What is it that you'll be able to trade in? I'm yet to really understand that. So the point I was trying to understand is, did you make your wealth from out of the colonization of Africa and all that? And you said, well, it's part of it, but you also went into some other kind of trade, right? That's what you said?
Yeah, but you see, look, if you sell, for instance, you have bauxite. If you sell it, the price you sell it raw, it will never be as high as the price you will sell aluminium. So even if you buy bauxite from overseas, and if you transform it in your country and then you sell aluminium, you still make more money than whoever sold the raw material.
Okay, I'll leave it there. We're running out of time, and I want to say thank you so much for the beautiful time. But let's look at the diplomatic passport issue in just about 2 minutes. You wanted people like Shatawale, Black Sheriff, and the rest to have diplomatic passports. Did you really mean it?
I didn't say that. I said that I saw a video of Sarkozy on stage who was promoting Ghana. And I suddenly thought, wow, it's incredible, because these guys, whenever they are overseas performing, they never forget to say a word, a good word about their country and attract people. They say, come to Ghana, and December is in Ghana, nowhere else. And in Ghana, we have this, we have that. And I was very impressed that most of them do that. And they do that in such a great way that ambassadors could try to promote their country. They would never reach as many people as these guys do in their Canadian tour that they are doing, like 5,000 people every evening. And every day they mention Ghana. So I thought they're so good at being ambassadors to their country. They would deserve diplomatic passports. Okay. But I hear it's become a viral thing.
This is 3FM.
So, and do you really want them to have diplomatic passports?
It's not up to me. I'm saying they are so good, they could be ambassadors, cultural ambassadors of their country, and therefore they would even deserve diplomatic passports. I think that at least one or two of them, it would make their life easier. And it would be sort of a recognition. It has happened in many African countries, in Benin, in DCR, that some cultural people who are leaders, who impersonate the country, have been given diplomatic passport. I mentioned, and if you think of Jamaica, you think Bob Marley. If you think Côte d'Ivoire, you think Alpha Blondy.
Yeah, that's right.
Some people are impersonating the country so much that they are, whether you like it or not, ambassadors of their country. So maybe, yeah, you could think of making one of these persons who have such an aura, such a fame overseas, and give such a positive image of Ghana overseas. Maybe that would be an option.
And I want to thank you so much for coming one more time. I do appreciate you, and I thank you so much. If you have any other thing to add, please go ahead and add that.
No, I want to thank you, because it's always a great opportunity to set the record straight about what France is doing or not doing. We didn't do everything right, but we didn't do all wrong. And we certainly didn't do what we are reproached with at the moment. But yes, something has to change.
Thank you so much, Anne. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Dieu merci.